In this video I will show you how through the help of volunteers I updated the graphics from this to this in just 3 days. I'm Ice and this is my 5th devlog on Feradeus. The first question you may have is, how do you find volunteers in the first place? Well, first you need a platform. This means anything where volunteers can communicate with you and submit volunteer work. In my case, that's my Discord server. There people can submit work, communicate, and there is a list of all tasks that need to be done. You can find volunteers by posting on YouTube or Reddit, but what I recommend the most is the Game Dev League server. That is probably the easiest place to find volunteers, as it is a general game dev server with many members. And you'll be surprised how many people there are that want to participate in game making. You can also use the Discord bot on Discord, but I don't really recommend it as you'll get a lot of spam and not really a lot of people who want to participate. That said, once you have your platform set up, the next step is lowering the barriers for entry. Why did I choose pixel art? Well, it's not only easier for me, it's also easier for everyone else who wants to participate. It's a lot easier than, for example, learning 3D animation. But even when it comes to the pixel art, it is a very simplistic style. This is because it's easier to make and easier for people to participate. If even you struggle with making your game, then other people will definitely struggle. So you should design your game in a way that makes it easy to create. At least that is if you want to work with volunteers, as it can be quite difficult to find volunteers otherwise. A lot of people want to help make games and be in the credits of a game. But the barriers for entry are quite high. This is why a volunteer project like this can enable more people to participate in game development, since you're splitting up the development between multiple people and paying attention to making the barriers as low as possible. Doing so also prevents that you become dependent on your volunteers. This was a mistake I did on my last project, where I would often be frustrated because I had to wait for another volunteer to finish one part of the game before I could continue. So once you have lowered the barriers for entry, the next step is to document. You will not want to explain your game every time a new person joins your server. Especially not when more than 90% of these will not become active volunteers. Instead, you will want to document everything there is to know about your game that a volunteer might need to know. Originally, I did this on a Google Doc, but now I'm doing it with a website, because the website is easier to navigate and just looks better and makes a better impression. There's a lot of free website makers out there. I use Google Sites. Which one you use isn't really that important as long as it allows you to document your game. Things you should include are what your game is about, how people can participate, what style the art should be in, and everything else you might want your volunteers to know. Once you have volunteers joining, you will quickly find out what you need to document based on what questions they're asking you. So if a new member is asking you what size the pixel art needs to be, then maybe that is a sign you should include that in your document. Now that you have volunteers on your server, how do you motivate them? One way I have found that you can do this is by showing off progress you have made in your game. This can be through YouTube, through Reddit, through Discord. What's important is that it reaches your volunteers. In my case, that would be YouTube and Discord. People want to participate in a game dev project that they think has a chance of releasing. Seeing progress means that the chance is increasing. It also helps to bring people's attention back to your game. Another thing it can do is to ask directly in DMs. The chances that the person will do it is much higher. However, my experience is that this can be a bit of a mixed bag. I would only do this with volunteers that are already quite active and where you are sure that they will do it. Or with tasks where you are dependent on other people's help. This is because asking around takes quite some time and often it's just better to do it yourself. Remember, volunteer developers should be an additional aid, and not the main way on how you achieve progress. One thing I do want to say before you go on to find volunteers is that you should very clearly communicate that they are volunteers. If you're making a commercial project, that is. Your volunteers should be aware that when they submit work, that work will be used for your project in a commercial way. and that they can't expect to get any of the earnings. This means that if you're making a commercial project, you won't get as many volunteers as if you were to make, for example, an open source project, in which case you wouldn't need to have this disclaimer. What's important is that people are aware of this before they participate so that there won't be any complaints afterwards. That said, you shouldn't take your volunteers for granted. They are helping you make your game, and that deserves nothing but praise. If you can, you should try to find a way to give back to your volunteers. For example, if they have participated a lot, you could put them as a character in your game. Finally, my last tip is... be patient. Just because you haven't seen a lot of activity in your community doesn't mean that they are inactive. Oftentimes they're busy with other things and will come back eventually. Instead of worrying about your community's activity, you should just continue working on your game. The thing that at the end gets people interested is the game you're making. And with that, this video is already finished. See you next time.
Thanks for watching Ice Cube Maker's video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, I would love if you liked and subscribed. That would help him out a lot. And if you're interested in becoming a volunteer yourself, there is a link to our Discord and the website in the description below.